Good day to everyone. We are the level 500 student at the University of BUEA. This is a presentation of course code 504 titled Introduction to Educational Administration and Planning, supervised by our course instructor, Professor Ebot Frederick Ashu. We are going to present on Unit 13, what is educational planning, by my classmates Fonja Kemanja Stephen and my humble self Yeye Rosin Karim. The objective of this presentation will be as follows. We'll define educational planning, discuss the reasons for a new form of educational planning, state the essential characteristics of the new form of educational planning, explaining the relationship between educational planning and economic planning. We'll state the benefits of educational planning, then identify, describe the major components of educational planning. In part 1, I, Yeye Rosin Karim, will be handling the following. I'll define educational planning, I'll discuss the reasons for a new form of educational planning and state the essential characteristics of the new form of educational planning, while Francha Kemachon Stephen will continue with part 2 with the following. He will explain the relationship between educational planning and economic planning, states the benefits of educational planning, and he is going to identify and describe the major components of educational planning. Okay, at the introductory part, in planning for education, the educational planners must look at the state of the society where it wants to go and what it will require additionally to get there. They also need to examine the nature of students, their needs and aspirations, the state of knowledge itself, educational arts and technology, and the innate ability of educational system to critically examine itself and to take its intelligent action to improve its performance. What then is educational planning? Educational planning is a systematic and strategic process that future educational needs, sets clear objectives, develop policies, organizes human, financial and material resources, and coordinate actions to improve the quality, access and relevance of education within a given context. It takes into account social, economic, technological and cultural changes to ensure equitable and sustainable education. In other words, educational planning is a process of setting educational goals, developing policies and strategies, and allocating resources in a systematic way to improve education in line with societal needs. Educational planning, according to Philip Combs in 1968, he defines it as a process that involves the application of rational, systematic analysis, systematic organization, development and allocation of resources with the aim of making education more effective and efficient to meet educational goals and needs of its students and the society. Combs emphasized the importance of adapting education systems to social, economic, and technological changes to ensure development and equity. We'll go to the reasons for a new form of educational planning. What is educational planning? Educational planning started since the invention of schooling. It is one of the fastest industries in the world and greatly affected by political, social, and technological factors. By the 1970s, many countries were experiencing shortcomings in their educational system as a result of educational planning that was fragmentary and non-integrated with other sectors of the economy. Thus, there was this need of a new form of educational planning. Therefore, there are many reasons for a new form of educational planning that we will see below. Firstly, wasteful imbalances within the educational system. This refers to inefficiency such as unequal distribution of resources, poor quality of education in some areas, or mismatch between the supply of educational services and actual demand. Barrett and Dembele in 2013 argue that educational planning must consider local context to avoid wastage caused by one-size-fits-all approaches. They continue that by tailoring plans to real needs, resources are used more effectively, reducing imbalances. For examples, schools were opened without classrooms, teachers or textbooks, and some regions or groups may receive excessive focus while others are neglected, leading to wastage and inequality. A new form of planning seeks to optimize resources allocation to avoid such imbalances. Secondly, we had financial bottlenecks. Limited fundings or inefficient use of funds can hinder the expansion and improvement of educational system. Financial bottlenecks occur when budget constraint prevents necessary investment in infrastructure, teacher training, or learning materials. In those days, the costs of education were rising faster than the revenues in the developing countries. Furthermore, the budget could not keep the pace with the rising number of students. Most of the costs of educational projects were underestimated, and the economical visibility of projects was not tested. The solution most countries opted was to spread available resources thinner over more and more students to the expense of quality and effectiveness. This resulted to high dropout rates, repeater rates, and overcrowded classrooms. Odin and Pupils in 2014 focused extensively on financial planning, emphasizing efficient use of scarce resources, innovative fundings, mechanism, and prioritization of expenditure to overcome financial constraints. Thus, modern educational planning emphasizes efficient budgeting, innovative financing, and prioritization to overcome this constraint. Thirdly, unemployment for the educated. In some cases, education system produce graduates who cannot find suitable jobs either due to mismatch between their skills they obtained taught and labor market needed or economic stagnation. There were not enough jobs for the educated. Just after independence, the job prospects in the developing countries were good, but in the 1970s, there were not enough vacancies. The economies were not creating as many jobs as they should. That is why Barrett and Dembele in 2013 discussed the mismatch between education output and labor market needs, stressing and planning must align curricular and training programs with economic reality. This situation signals the need for planning education that is more aligned with market demands, vocational training, and lifelong learning opportunities. The fourth point we have here, the wrong kind of education. If education does not equip learners with relevant skills, knowledge, and values, it becomes ineffective. Many students were receiving the wrong kind of education because of the ill-suited curriculum which was adopted from the colonial masters. These problems created a waste of resources and post-services handicaps to national budget. For example, an emphasis on rote learning or outdated curricula can limit learners' potential. That is why in UNESCO 2015 advocated for quality education that foster critical thinking, creativity, and lifelong learning, moving beyond the rote learning. Therefore, there was a need for a new educational planning that promotes curriculum reform, competency-based education, and inclusion of the 21st century skills. Straight away, we'll move to the characteristics of new form of educational planning. It is comprehensive and integrated. The new form of educational planning takes a holistic approach, addressing all aspects of education, including curriculum, infrastructure, teacher training, student welfare, and community involvement. It integrates various sectors such as health, social services, and technology to support the educational goals. It ensures alignment between policies, resources, and implementation processes covering short-term and long-term perspective. Secondly, it is flexible and adaptable. The planning process is not static, it is dynamic, allowing adjustment based on feedback, changing needs, and emerging challenges. It accommodates diverse learning environment, students, and cultural contexts. It supports innovations and experimentation with new teaching methods and technology. Thirdly, it is participatory and inclusive. The planning actively involves the stakeholders, including students, teachers, parents, community leaders, and policymakers. It promotes equity by ensuring marginalized and disadvantaged groups have a voice and access to education. It values diversity and promotes inclusive education for students with disabilities and from minority groups. Now we move to educational planning dimension. What is educational planning dimension talking about? It deals with the scope of the educational sector, usually dealt with educational planning. This scope is made up of formal and non-formal education. What is formal education? Formal education is defined as the education which is received through schooling by a way of the primary, the secondary, and tertiary forms. Formal education is simply one of the means for the developing of knowledge, skills, and capacities of persons for participation in the labor force. Formal education promotes social and political integration, maintains social control, that is, teaching punctuality, obedience to rules, and many more, and encourages social change. Non-formal education. What then is non-formal education? Non-formal education is defined as the organized and acquisition of skills and knowledge outside the formal education system. Non-formal education provides a wide range of learning services or opportunities which lie beyond the scope of formal education. For example, people being trained for a job course like electricians, mechanics, and many other jobs that we know. It is a means of extending skills and knowledge gained or acquired in an informal manner. For example, in in-service training, non-formal education is the only opportunity for the uneducated, as we can say. Thank you.
I am Fonjia Nkemanjong Stephen, the second presenter on this about presentation. I'm going to start with the relationship between educational planning and economic planning. The economic and educational sectors are major pillars in any national development. The relationship between economic and educational planning is two-directional in linkage. This means that education sector, after the training, supplies the manpower needed to work in the economy. The economy provides the educational sector with the financial and other resources they require to train skilled manpower or labor. The economy produces more resources which will again be allocated to the education sector to produce more manpower for the economy. The cycle continues. Some of the main relationships are as follows. The first one I'm going to look at is education as a driver of economic growth. Educational planning is closely linked with economic planning because education develops the human capital necessary for economic development. What do we mean by this? Educational planning focuses on developing human skilled and knowledgeable workforce by ensuring access to quality education and relevant training. On the other hand, economic planning relies on this educated workforce to strive and drive productivity, innovation, and competitiveness, which are crucial for economic growth. For example, a country invests in STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, education to produce engineers and scientists. This workforce supports the growth of technology industries, boosting GDP and employment. Another relationship is mutual influence and independence. Educational and economic planning influences each other but also maintain some independence. Economic conditions influence educational funding, infrastructure, and policy priorities simultaneously. Education shapes economic realities such as budget constraints, labor market strengths, and industrial needs. Let's look at mutual influence. Under mutual influence, we say that economic needs shape educational priorities, e.g., vocational training for emerging industries, while educational outcomes affect economic performance by supplying capable human resources. The other part is independence. Education also saves social, cultural, and personal development goals beyond economic objectives. Similarly, economic planning addresses factors beyond education, like infrastructure and trade policies. For example, during an economic recession, economic planning might reduce budgets, affecting education funding. Conversely, a new economic strategy focused on green energy might lead to educational reform, emphasizing environmental sciences. The third relationship is long-term strategic alignment. Both educational and economic planning are long-term endeavors that require coherent strategies for sustainable development. Educational planning and economic planning must be aligned strategically over the long term. This alignment ensures that workforce possesses the relevant skills, minimizing unemployment and fostering innovation. For example, a country anticipating growth in its digital economy designs educational policies to integrate digital literacy and coding skills from primary to higher education. Economic plans simultaneously encourage investment in IT sectors. The next heading we're going to look at is benefits of educational planning. 1. Optimum utilization, efficient and resource allocation. Educational planning leads to an optimum utilization of the financial, human, and physical resources of education. This reduces wastage and ensures that investments are directed to priority areas. The optimum utilization of financial and non-financial resources also leads to performance improvement in terms of greater efficiency and effectiveness in the educational system. Educational planning ensures that available resources such as teachers, classrooms, and materials are used to their fullest potential without waste. Planning helps allocate funds, staff, and materials are where they are most needed. For example, a school district plans the class sizes to match teacher availability, avoiding both overcrowded classrooms and underused teachers. The government allocates more funds to schools in underprivileged areas for infrastructural development while maintaining maintenance budgets in developed areas. 2. Enhance quality of education. This benefit is very important. By setting clear objectives, monitoring progress, and revising curricula and teaching methods, educational planning contributes to raising education quality. What do I mean by this? By setting standards and goals, planning promotes curriculum development, teacher training, and assessment methods that improve learning outcomes. For example, introducing teacher training programs and modern teaching methods as part of the educational plan will improve students' performance. 3. Adequate educational planning. An adequate educational planning enables an educational system to be adaptable, accommodate change, and also provide stability. Care planning enables the educational system to maintain as equilibrium in an ever-changing society. Therefore, educational leaders must anticipate the future and plan for it. Adequate planning will consider all aspects, e.g., infrastructure, curriculum, and staff, in order to provide education system that meets current demands. For example, planning for new technology or technological labs, updated textbooks, and recruitment of qualified teachers to meet the growing student population's needs. Major components of educational planning is there another heading we are going to look at. And the first point we are going to look at is goal setting and policy formulation. This involves defining clear, achievable, and measurable educational objectives aligned with national development priorities and societal needs. Policies provide a framework and guidelines for achieving those goals. Goals guide and help the entire planning process and help prioritize efforts. The goals here may include expanding access, improving quality, promoting equality, and enhancing relevance. Policy formulation here will outline strategies, standards, and regulations to guide implementation of all these plans. 2. Needs assessment and situation analysis. These components involves collecting and analyzing data on current educational status, their resources, demographic trends, and societal demands to identify gaps and priorities. These include assessment of infrastructure, teacher supply, curriculum relevance, and learner needs. The third component we are going to look at is forecasting and demand analysis. Projecting future educational needs based on population growth, economic trends, technological changes, and labor market demands to plan capacity and resource requirements. This will help to anticipate demand for different educational levels and types, e.g., as I said before, educational training. Number 4 components we are going to look at is resource mobilization and allocation. Planning for effective use of financial, human, and material resources, including budgeting, funding strategies, and development and deployment of teachers and facilities. Why all this? All this will ensure resources are targeted to priority areas and used effectively. Conclusion. After all our presentations, we want to conclude that educational planning is concerned with the planning of a set of decisions for future action pertaining to education so as to make it more effective and efficient in responding to the needs and goals of its students and society. If all this is done, then we will say that major shortcomings of educational systems in developing countries will be identified. And as when it is identified, those new form of educational planning, among others, will be comprehensive and form an integral part of educational management. Thank you.
In all, we both say as pedagogues in the field, educational planning is, however, necessary in the educational system. Thank you.